Hi, my name is AJ Goldsby. I'm a life master from Pensacola, Florida, and I'm coming back today to bring you part 5 in my video series on the chess game between Grandmaster Wesley So and Grandmaster Alexei Shirov. And this is from the Sigeman and Company tournament that was played in June in 2011. And I've already covered the first about 20 or so moves, 21 moves in detail in the first four parts. Just quickly, we're going to just pick up the game. Well, let me go ahead and just go back to the moves so you can see the moves here. And again, I'll later on when I'm finished with all the videos, I will post links on all the pages for replay pages so you can replay this game at your own speed on the Chess Games website. And also too, I'll post the link for my analysis. The analysis that link is posted in under part 1 in the little box that says show more. If you'll just click on that, you'll find the link for my webpage, and I'll post all that analysis and all those games, the links for all that, under all the videos when I'm through with this video series. Just quickly, let's run through the moves. D4, D5, it starts off as a Slav. White plays the rather offbeat or unusual B3. It's unusual, it's off the beaten track, but it's not bad. You know, top grandmasters like Topalov and Anand and Kramnik have all played this move. Knight BD7, black just develops normally. And here, if I were white, I would have simply castled. White decides to put his knight on e5 immediately, which poses some real problems for Shirov. If he allows white to reinforce this knight with f4, he may never be able to kick this knight off. So Shirov decides to take immediate steps to remove this. Check, knight d2. Now knight takes e5. Here, Shirov probably should have just castled, but he decided he has to get rid of that knight. That was, again, part of his plan to get rid of the knight on e5. Knight takes, d takes e. Knight d7, a3, hitting the bishop on b4. Bishop a5, white castles. White has a very solid edge at this point. f6, black's trying to get rid of this pawn. The knight has been temporarily removed from e5, that knight that was on the e5 square just a few moves ago. But now all of a sudden it's been replaced by a pawn. In some ways, this pawn is even worse. Literally cuts the chessboard in half. Shirov should probably just go ahead and castle. He'll have a slightly inferior game, but that's probably the safest move for him. But he decides he doesn't want white to be left with his pawn here on the e5 square. So he takes immediate steps to go ahead and remove that pawn. f6, knight f3, bishop c7, 14, e takes f6, knight takes f6, knight e5, castles, white plays f4. And now I've got a little bit of a colorized arrow thing that I can show you just really quickly, which shows you some of the ideas of white's pieces and some of the travel ways and some of the different things, movements that might happen for white. It just gives you just a very quickly at a glance an idea of what could happen. But anyway, white played that move f4, which was a good move. Did weaken white's kingside slightly, but it greatly reinforced white's grip on the center. Bishop d7. Again, all these moves are covered in the first 4 parts of the video. This is part 5 on my video series on this game. Rook f3, bishop e8, queen c2. And now black decides, he's got to do something, to block up the center. He plays bishop takes e5, knight e4. And as we covered in the last part of this video series, basically black's offering to sacrifice a pawn to free his game and to allow his light squared bishop to get in the game. So is having none of that. He doesn't want any part of that. He plays bishop takes d takes e4, d takes e4, rff1. And this is where we left off in the last part of the video series, and this is where we will pick up our detailed coverage. Again, this move, rook on f3 to f1, that was truly a grandmaster move. It's a very deep move. It's a very well planned out move by So, a very deep idea here. He understands that he has a grip on the position, and he intends to keep that grip on the position. And basically, taking that pawn is only going to free black's game, and it's also going to create an opposite colored bishop in game, which we're already in, but it'll be an opposite colored bishop in game where black's bishop will have a lot of free squares and be able to pretty much have free reign on the light squares, which is something that Grandmaster So does not want to allow. And black plays bishop g6, and again, this is where we left off in the last part of our series. And now, basically, black, there is an idea in this position for black, and I missed this the first time around. It's simply say, play one of these rooks to d8 and then play rook d3, and if that happens, already black is better. So has already foreseen that. He's already planned for that, and he plays the move c5. so that when black plays his rook to the d file, then white simply blocks the d file with bishop to d6. So you can see that So has already taken his plan, his strategy, elements of strategy, and his moves and variations have pretty much taken everything into account here. Black doesn't have a good position now. Obviously, he's got his queen's attacked, and unless he's going to exact the exchange, he has to move his queen. So Shirov plays queen f7. He could have played queen h4 here, but after queen h4, just simply our AD1, and both Houdini and Fritz evaluate this position as being greatly better for white, just hugely better for white. I think Shirov does the safe thing. I think a grandmaster understands that when you're not sure of what to do with your queen, especially the strongest piece, you avoid the edge of the board because it could get trapped or bad things could happen to it. So he just keeps the queen here after this move, bishop d6. He decides to keep the queen near the king and near the center. So he plays queen f7. It's a little less passive move, but it's also less risky than putting the queen on h4. White continues to improve his position, RED1, bishop to d5. And now white's going to double his rooks. Under cover of this bishop on d4, white can dominate the d file, and black really can't do anything about it. So rook d4, rook d7, h3. This is a nice little move here, threatening to kick this bishop on g4. Now Shirov is faced with a problem. He probably does not want to allow white to play g4, but in actuality, that's what he should have done. In fact, the best move, according to the chess engines, and my analysis is black should have played, instead of he plays h5. What black should have probably played was simply played the pawn to h6, and if white plays g4, then retreat the bishop to g6 or h7. That would have been a safer continuation for black. But, Shirov is not one to play it safe, and to be honest, to allow white a free kick and a huge gain in space for free by playing g2, g4, that was just something that Alexei Shirov was not going to allow, good or bad. And so he plays the move h5. And now white again, he's just continuing to develop and put pressure on the d file. Queen g6. Now black actually has a threat. Kind of got to feel sorry for Shirov a little bit, because he's used to, in a lot of his games, I've studied many of his games. I have his 2 series of books, Fire on Board 1 and Fire on Board 2, his second book. And in those, he shows off some of his best games. And in just about all of those games, you see the theme of pretty much Shirov dominating play. And in fact, once he gets hold of the initiative, he just seems to push people around and then push them right off the chessboard. And, he just plays sometimes really brilliant chess. However, in this game, he's never given that opportunity. He has managed to whip up one very minor threat. He has the threat here of bishop takes h3, winning a pawn. Of course, So's not going to allow that. He plays king h2 to get off the file. Now black plays h4. He's got the threat of maybe invading white's half of the chessboard with queen g3 check. Again, this is not something that So is going to allow. He plays queen f2, which hits this pawn on the h4 square. That pawn right there is now attacked, so basically black has to do something about that. So black plays queen h5. White plays just rook at 1 to d2. That's a nice, safe little move. That's a little move, the kind of move that a grandmaster will play. In other words, gets the queen off the attack. In other words, if this rook ever moves or has to get off the file, then I don't have to worry about dropping a rook on d1. And, notice that, white's pieces are all working well together. They're all doing something. They're all attacking things or touching bases with each other, whereas black's pieces are pretty much defensive. The rooks are shut out behind the white bishop on d6. The bishop's on f5. It looks nice, like a nice square, but in actuality, it doesn't attack anything. I mean, this pawn is defended by the pawn on g2, and this pawn is in the way of the bishop. So really, this bishop on f5 is really a bad bishop. And the queen is really the only piece that black has that's on a halfway decent post. So really, both Fritz, Houdini, and Rybka all evaluate this position as being much, much better for white. But it's not a clear win yet. That's one thing I do want to emphasize. It's hardly a clear win. So basically, white's still got to prove the point or make something good happen. Going back to chess game, at this point, now Shirov actually plays a mistake. This is a critical position. At every point, it seems like So understood, maybe even had an insight to psychology. Maybe his trainer briefed him on the kind of player that Shirov was, and he knows that Shirov cannot simply, his style isn't like Petrosian. Passive defense just isn't Shirov's cup of tea. So now we see Shirov finally cracking under the pressure, and So's been putting pressure and forcing him to make these hard decisions again and again and again. And now Shirov, we basically see him cracking under pressure. Probably what Black should play here is simply b5. That's what several engines recommend here. Just play b5, try to gain a little bit of space. Now White's got a plan there. He can simply play moves like a4, rook a2, bring the queen back around, queen e1, queen a1. He can crack the a file open. And really, there's not much that Black can do about that. I mean, that's a winning plan for White, but Black doesn't have anything else. But here, Shirov actually makes a worse move. He plays king h7, and all this does is basically put his king on a more exposed square in the long run, and it's going to cost him, tempo as well. In fact, this could be literally the losing move, because at this point, it may be that Black's position gets so uncoordinated and so tangled up that he might not ever recover. Now White decides it's time to free his pieces to challenge the d file. He plays bishop e5. And now Black, he would like to exchange pieces. You'd say, well, normally when you're defending, the normal rule of thumb is that when you are defending, you should simply exchange as many pieces as possible. But here that doesn't work, and I can show you the proof here. Just we'll quickly run through that variation. Rook takes d4, rook takes d4, b6, rook d7, rook g8, rook takes a7, and White's winning easily. And those are all engine moves, and it's pretty much forced. I mean, Black doesn't have any good moves. For example, when White played rook d7, this pawn here is double attack, so the rook had to go to g8, and now White just clips off a pawn, and here position is an easy win for White. All Black's pieces are tied up. He's stuck on defense, and one idea for White would simply be, to either capture this pawn, or if Black takes this pawn, move his rook over and run a pawn up and make a new queen. So and because Black's so tight up on the other side of the board, I don't think he can defend against that idea. But anyway, here Black plays the move rook f7. He has to. The engines show that move was forced, completely forced. Black didn't have a choice, and also too, if I already showed you what happened if he exchanges there. So anytime you have to back up or give up an important file, I think you can generally, when you make a concession like that, you should generally know, an experienced player would know, that his position must be much worse, possibly even lost. White plays rook d7. He challenges the file. Black plays raf8. He's trying to get his pieces working together again. And now White plays rook at 2 to d6. That was nice and maybe is good enough for White to eventually win the game. But actually, at this position here, let's just stop here for a second and I'll talk for a minute. But just try to take a look. In fact, if you want to, you can pause the video. Now, hopefully you did what I asked and you paused the video and you took a few seconds to study this position and try to figure out maybe what the best move for White is. Don't feel bad if you did not find it, because this is a very complicated variation, and it's difficult to find even with the engines. To find it without the engines, you'd have to be a very strong grandmaster. Rook takes f7, rook takes f7, rook d8, and here White has a very simple plan. An experienced player that, say, the master level or even expert level, might know that one of White's ideas here is simply play his rook over, get his queen to the d file, play the rook over, and if he invades on the last rank, there's going to be threats of mate to this king or threats of winning material. So Black plays rook e7. White just plays rook a8, a6, rook d8, rook f7, king g1. This is a very good move. Queen h6, queen e2, queen g6, king f1. Again, there was that threat of bishop takes h3. A lot of these moves are engine-generated moves too. So if you don't understand this variation, or it looks like pieces are just sort of flopping about, you have to bear in mind this was the product of several days of analysis. Queen h6, queen d1, queen g6, rook to b8. Now he's threatening to penetrate to d8 with a one-game rook e7, queen d8, queen h5, and now king e1. That's a very nice move, because now the queen is free to move and he doesn't have to worry about checks here. If he'd have taken the rook there, then Black could have got a perpetual check by checking there with the queen, and that was obviously something White didn't want to allow. And now rook f7, he's got to save his rook. a4, king g6, queen d4, king h7, rook e8, king g6, rook g8, queen h6, queen d8, and boom. All of a sudden, the threat now is just rook here trapping Black's queen. And there's also a threat of rook here hitting the queen, and then this pawn falls. So basically, Black's about as lost as he can be. There's no way that he can save his game at this point. And it's just If you want to use an engine to analyze that, you can see that. Thank you.